October 10th, 2025, Kensington Palace. It's late at night in London. The streets are quiet, but behind the old stone walls of Kensington Palace, the lights are still on. Something's happening. Then suddenly, the royal statement breaks the silence. The Princess of Wales is receiving medical treatment once again. Within minutes, crowds start gathering outside the palace gates. Some stand there in disbelief. Others cry softly, whispering Catherine's name like a prayer. Cameras flash, reporters rush in, and social media explodes with one single question. Is this just another rumor? Or is the princess truly fighting for her life again? Because for the people of Britain, Catherine isn't just a royal, she's a symbol of strength, grace, and quiet resilience. And now that symbol seems to be fading in the shadows of uncertainty. It's not the first time we've heard whispers about her health, but this time something feels different. The palace isn't denying it. The tone of that brief statement, calm but heavy, suggests that this might be serious, very serious. And somewhere inside those palace walls, William, the future king, is said to be by her side, refusing to leave. So what's really going on behind those closed royal doors tonight? What is Buckingham Palace not telling us? Because if history has taught us anything, it's that the British monarchy never reveals everything at once. To understand why the entire nation is holding its breath tonight, we have to go back to where it all began, to the illness the princess once fought with every ounce of her strength. It all began in 2024 on a quiet spring evening when the world stopped to listen to a message from Kensington Palace. The video was simple, no royal stage, no official ceremony, just Catherine, sitting alone, looking directly into the camera. Her voice was soft, steady, almost fragile. And then came the words no one expected to hear. I have been diagnosed with cancer. For a moment, the entire nation fell silent. The streets of London seemed to freeze. Within minutes, news channels from New York to Sydney broke the story. The brave princess. That was the headline everywhere. The Guardian, CNN, the New York Times, they all showed the same photograph. Catherine's calm eyes, her quiet strength, her grace in the face of fear. But behind that calm, there was pain. Pain that went far beyond the physical, because Catherine wasn't just fighting for her life. She was fighting for her family, for George, Charlotte, and little Louis, who were still too young to understand why their mother suddenly had to rest more often. In those first weeks, she disappeared completely from the public eye. Royal events continued without her. William attended alone, wearing his usual polite smile, but his eyes told another story. The quiet fear of a husband who could lose everything. Every now and then, the world caught a glimpse of her, or a photo outside a hospital, a reflection in a car window. Catherine wearing a soft scarf over her head, her face pale but smiling, always lifting her hand to wave at the crowd. It wasn't the smile of a princess, it was the smile of a woman determined to be brave. The British press began calling her the nation's heartbeat. In America, she became something more, a global symbol of grace and quiet resilience. People compared her to Princess Diana, saying she had that same kind of strength, the kind that doesn't need to shout. Catherine never made her illness about herself. She spoke about hope, about awareness, about staying strong even when everything hurt. During one rare interview, she said, "If my children can see their mother smile through pain, they'll know courage is quiet." Those words became a message of comfort for millions. They weren't rehearsed or royal, they were human. And that made them unforgettable. Months passed. Treatment continued. Slowly, she began to recover. Doctors praised her willpower. The nation cheered every time she stepped out in public. For a while, hope filled the air again. By late 2024, Kensington Palace hinted that she would soon return to her royal duties. When she finally appeared on the palace balcony beside William, the crowd erupted in joy. She looked radiant, her smile warm, her hand gently resting on William's arm. For that brief moment, it felt like the nightmare had ended. The cameras captured her laughing, whispering something to William that made him smile. It was the image of recovery, of life finding its way back after months of fear. The people believed she had won. But sometimes, the quietest storms are the ones we never see coming. In recent months, whispers began to circulate again. Questions arose. Why had Catherine stopped attending public events? Why did Kensington Palace sound so cautious in its updates? Some said she was exhausted. Others feared a relapse. The palace said nothing. And that silence, that deep, uneasy silence, began to terrify people. Because in royal history, when the palace stays silent, it usually means something is very wrong. Across Britain, a familiar worry returned. The woman who had once inspired a nation's strength might be fighting once more, this time in silence. There's something different in the air now. The tension around Buckingham, the uncertainty in William's face whenever her name is mentioned, it all points to a truth that no one dares to say out loud. This isn't just about Catherine anymore. It's about the very heart of the monarchy itself. To understand why this moment feels heavier than ever, we must look beyond the headlines into the quiet walls of Kensington Palace, where love, courage, and fear are once again being tested. Even after everything she's been through, Catherine never let her illness define her. She kept showing up. She kept smiling. And somehow, she kept giving others hope, even when she was the one who needed it the most. You'd still see her walking into children's hospitals, greeting little patients with that same warm glow in her eyes. No cameras, no grand speeches, just quiet moments that said more than words ever could. She'd kneel beside a hospital bed, hold a child's hand, and say softly, "You're stronger than you think." And the thing is, she really meant it. You could feel it. That calm voice, that gentle smile. It wasn't pity, it was belief. A deep, honest belief that everyone, no matter how broken or scared they felt, still had a spark inside them worth fighting for. People who met her would talk about how Catherine didn't just visit. She listened. She remembered names. She looked people in the eye. And in those few minutes, she made them feel seen, not as patients or statistics, but as human beings. She became, without ever saying it, a quiet symbol of courage. The kind of courage that doesn't shout or demand attention. It simply endures. There's something deeply powerful about that, isn't there? When you see someone facing pain with grace, not because it's easy, but because they want to protect the people they love from worrying too much. Catherine did that. She carried herself with a kind of quiet dignity that inspired millions. You could see it as a photo, the way she'd wave to the crowd, even when she looked tired, the way her eyes still shone when she talked to children battling cancer, or parents who were terrified for their little ones. Somehow she always found the right words. One volunteer once said, "When Catherine visits, the room feels lighter." Maybe it was her smile. Maybe it was her kindness. Or maybe it was that she never pretended life was perfect. She just showed that even in the middle of pain, there's still room for kindness. Her strength wasn't loud or dramatic. It was steady, quiet, and deeply human. And that's what made people love her even more. Because Catherine wasn't just the Princess of Wales, she became the face of hope itself. Her laughter at charity events, her hugs with patients, the way she'd stop to talk to nurses and families. All of it reminded people that compassion still matters, that grace still exists in this world. And maybe, in some way, she was healing herself by helping others heal. Every smile she gave, every hand she held, every kind word she spoke, it became part of a legacy far greater than any title. Catherine's journey reminded people that strength isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up, with grace, with kindness, and with faith. Because behind every smile she gave, there was pain, but she never let that pain win. And perhaps that's why, when the news broke, when people heard that her cancer had returned, it felt like the whole nation stopped breathing. And it was in that moment that all of Britain realized hope itself was being tested. Outside Kensington Palace, The air feels heavy but full of love. You can see it in the sea of flowers covering the gates. Bouquets of roses, lilies, and daffodils, each one carrying a small note that reads, "Get well soon, Princess," or "We love you, Catherine." Some people stand silently with candles in their hands. Others quietly hum "God Save the King," but this time the song sounds softer, almost like a prayer. It's been days since the palace confirmed that the Princess of Wales is receiving treatment again. Yet every night people still come. Some bring their children. Others just stand there, staring at the windows of the palace, hoping to catch even the faintest sign of her light. On social media, her name trends across the world. Hashtags like #Pray for Catherine, #Stay Strong, Kate, and #We Love You, Kate fill every timeline. Celebrities post photos of her smiling through pain. News anchors speak with tears in their voices. Even people who have never cared about the royal family find themselves typing messages of hope for a woman they've never met but somehow feel connected to. One woman outside the palace, her voice trembling as she spoke to a reporter, said something that touched everyone watching. She said, "She's the heart of our monarchy. Without her, even the palace feels cold." And maybe that's true. Maybe Catherine isn't just a princess. Maybe she's the warmth that keeps the crown human. Across the ocean, news outlets in America, Canada, and Australia echo the same sentiment. The world stands with Kate. One headline reads, "Talk shows replay her past speeches about mental health, motherhood, and resilience. They remind viewers that she never used her illness as a shield. She turned it into strength. Even now, as people light candles in the rain, they're not just mourning her suffering, they're celebrating her spirit." Because Catherine has become more than a royal figure. She's a symbol of grace under fire, of kindness in the face of pain. And as the crowd outside Kensington Palace grows larger with each passing night, there's one thing everyone seems to agree on. They're not ready to let go of their princess. Not yet. To the people of Britain, she's not just the Princess of Wales. She's their hope, their courage, their heart, and perhaps that's why, when the news broke of her condition worsening, the silence across the country felt almost sacred, as if millions were holding their breath, praying for one woman to pull through once more. Because if anyone can, it's her. Now, at 8, and as the night settles over London, one thought lingers in the air. If love alone could heal, Catherine would already be well. And that's what makes what's coming next even harder to bear. September 2025. London was supposed to be quiet that month, a calm before the royal calendar filled again for the autumn season. But inside Kensington Palace, silence meant something very different. It meant fear. Rumors started softly, like whispers in a hospital hallway. A nurse seen leaving a private clinic late at night, a black car with royal security pulling into a restricted entrance. And then word spread, the Princess of Wales had been admitted to hospital 3 times in less than a month. No one wanted to believe it. After all, Catherine had looked radiant during her last public appearance. She smiled. She waved. She was even seen laughing with school children just weeks earlier. But then, suddenly, she disappeared from view. An insider source close to the palace told the Daily Mirror, "Her condition isn't worsening suddenly. It's been returning quietly for months." Those words hit like a cold wind through the British public. What did that mean? Had the cancer really come back? And if so, how long had the palace been hiding it? Officially, Kensington Palace said nothing. No confirmation, no denial, just silence. The kind of silence that speaks louder than words. Behind the scenes, staff were reportedly told to avoid all discussion of Her Royal Highness's health. Press inquiries were met with polite, mechanical responses. "We do not comment on private medical matters." But the media couldn't stay quiet forever. By mid-September, the BBC was accused of deliberately ignoring questions about the princess's condition. Online forums exploded with frustration. One journalist tweeted, "We report on everything: fashion, politics, sports, But suddenly, the most beloved woman in Britain disappears and no one dares to ask why. People began digging for answers. Tabloids speculated about experimental treatments in Germany. Others claimed she was resting at a private estate in Norfolk. Each story more desperate than the last. But none had proof, and perhaps that uncertainty was what hurt the most. For the British people, Catherine wasn't just a royal, she was a symbol of grace under pressure. The idea that she might be suffering again, quietly, behind those palace walls felt unbearable. A London mother waiting outside Kensington Palace told Sky News, "I remember how brave she was the first time, but if this is happening again, it just breaks my heart." That grief turned into frustration. Why wasn't the palace being honest? Hadn't the monarchy learned from the past, from Diana, from the mistakes of secrecy and control? As one royal commentator put it, they think silence protects dignity, but sometimes silence kills trust. And while social media boiled with anger and concern, palace officials continued to hide behind official statements and closed doors. The tension was palpable, a nation holding its breath, waiting for the truth. Then came the leak that changed everything. An anonymous email sent to several British journalists claimed that Catherine's condition had relapsed in late summer, and that further treatment was being planned abroad. The message ended with one chilling line: "This cannot be kept from the public much longer." It was the spark that reignited every fear from a year before. Once again, the princess who had inspired millions was at the center of a storm she never asked for. And through it all, one person watched the silence grow heavier by the day. Someone who could see what the public could not. The fatigue behind her smiles. The pain she tried so hard to hide. That person was Prince William. He was the first to realize that things were slipping out of control, that the very institution he was destined to lead was now keeping him awake at night. And while the palace tried to maintain the illusion of calm, William knew the truth. This wasn't just another rumor. It was the beginning of a crisis that could change the monarchy forever. It's late, London's quiet again, but inside the royal residence, nothing feels still. The phones keep ringing. The lights in William's office haven't gone out for days. He's no longer just the Prince of Wales. He's a man trying to hold his world together while everything he loves begins to fall apart. His father, King Charles, is still battling his illness. And now Catherine, the woman who has always been his anchor, is back in treatment. Two of the people who define his life are both fighting to survive, and William is stuck between them, torn apart by helplessness. One aide described him as haunted. Another said he doesn't sleep anymore. He makes late-night calls to the palace doctors, his voice low, rough, almost breaking. How much more can she take? How much more can any of us take? You can almost hear the exhaustion in that question. It's not just fear, it's a kind of grief that hasn't happened yet but already hurts. People often see William as the calm, composed future king. But behind those palace walls, he's just a husband terrified of losing his wife, and a son praying his father will wake up stronger tomorrow. Every day, the press camp outside the hospital, waiting for a glimpse of him. Reporters yell questions, but he walks past silently, eyes hidden behind dark glasses. Some criticize his silence. Others understand that he's protecting the only piece of privacy his family has left. Inside, William is fighting another kind of battle, the one with the media machine that refuses to stop spinning. The palace's communications team urges him to release a statement to calm the public, to show that the royal family is still in control. But he says no. He's tired of pretending that everything is fine when it clearly isn't. He's not angry, a close friend said. He's just done. He's trying to keep his family from collapsing in front of the world. In those quiet hours between midnight and dawn, William often sits in his car outside the hospital, staring at the glowing windows. Somewhere inside is Catherine, his Catherine, and he's powerless to do anything but wait. The same man who's trained to command, to lead, to make decisions that affect millions. now can't fix the one thing that matters most. You can imagine what that does to him. The pressure, the pain, the camera's always waiting to capture the slightest sign of weakness. And yet, when he finally steps out of that car, straightens his suit, and faces the world again, there's no sign of the storm inside. Just that same quiet strength, the kind that Catherine once called his greatest armor. Still, there's something about this moment that feels different. This isn't the polished royal image the public is used to. It's raw, human, fragile, the kind of heartbreak that no crown can protect him from. And in all of this, there's something profoundly lonely about William's role. He has to be the son, the husband, the father, and the future king. All at once, he has to smile for his children while hiding the fear in his eyes. He has to show the nation hope when, deep down, he's not sure he believes in it himself. But that's what makes this story so deeply human. Because beneath the titles and the protocol, there's a man simply trying not to lose the people he loves most. And just when it seems like the weight of it all might break him, someone else in the palace is watching, calm, distant, and oddly collected. Because while William drowns in worry, Camilla seems strangely at ease. They say silence can be powerful, but when it comes to Queen Camilla, silence can also be suspicious. Over the past few weeks, as tension quietly built inside the palace and the public grew more anxious about the royal family's stability, one person seemed completely untouched by the storm. Camilla. No statements, no interviews, no words of comfort, just one brief, almost indifferent appearance at a local event in Cornwall, where she smiled politely for the cameras, then disappeared as quickly as she came. For someone who's supposed to represent warmth and reassurance in times of uncertainty, that silence spoke louder than any speech could. The British press didn't miss a beat. Headlines called her the Silent Queen. Commentators began comparing her calm demeanor with the worried faces of the public, who had been desperate for some sign of compassion from Buckingham Palace. One commentator even said, almost mockingly, "She's calm because silence always works in her favor." And maybe that's true, because if there's one thing Camilla has mastered over the years, it's the art of saying nothing and letting others' words fade into the noise. When Diana spoke, it shook the monarchy. When Harry and Meghan spoke, it rattled the institution. But when Camilla stays silent, it's as if the waves crash, and she just watches them break, untouched, unbothered, waiting for the noise to pass. It's a kind of silence that's both calculated and comfortable. She knows that as long as she keeps quiet, no one can twist her words, no one can accuse her directly. And somehow, in that stillness, she always finds a way to come out, cleaner than before. But here's the question everyone's whispering. Is her calmness a sign of strength or strategy? Rumors inside the palace suggest something more subtle, even opportunistic. According to insiders, Camilla might see Catherine's withdrawal from public life not as a tragedy, but as a chance, a moment to step forward and reshape her image as the active queen, the one who's out there working, representing, holding the crown steady while others stay behind closed doors. It wouldn't be the first time she's turned a royal crisis to her advantage. Years ago, she was the outsider, the other woman, the villain of the story. Now she stands beside the king, commanding respect. That transformation didn't happen by chance. It happened by patience, by waiting, by staying silent when it mattered most. So maybe her silence now isn't strange at all. Maybe it's deliberate. Because while the public searches for empathy, Camilla might be playing a longer game, one where every quiet gesture, every carefully chosen appearance, every moment of calmness adds to a new image, that of a queen who endures while others falter. And perhaps that's the most unsettling part. When everyone else is speaking, fighting, or falling apart, Camilla simply smiles, says nothing, and somehow always ends up winning. Outside the gates of Kensington Palace, the night was quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that only happens when a nation is holding its breath. The soft glow of hundreds of candles flickered against the dark iron fences. People stood shoulder to shoulder, strangers bound together by worry and love for one woman. Some brought flowers, others left handwritten notes. And right in the middle of it all was a small card from a little girl, maybe 6 years old. Her handwriting was uneven, the letters tilting to one side. It said, "Please get better, Princess Kate." That one message seemed to capture everything people were feeling. The hope, the fear, the disbelief that someone so full of life could now be fighting such a silent battle. Parents lifted their children onto their shoulders so they could see the palace windows, whispering, "That's where the princess lives." And though no one said it out loud, everyone was thinking the same thing. Please don't let this be the end of her light. By morning, the headlines were short and simple. She's still fighting. Just 4 words. But for millions across Britain, those words meant everything. They weren't just news, they were a prayer. A reminder that Catherine was still holding on. Across social media, pray for Catherine and Stay Strong Kate were trending again. People from all over the world, America, Canada, Australia, were sending messages of love and strength. Somehow, Catherine had become more than just a royal figure. She was the person who made the monarchy feel human again. The one who smiled even when the world was watching too closely. The one who held a child's hand in a hospital and said softly, "You're stronger than you think." And now it was as if that strength had come full circle. The people were sending it back to her. The crowds outside the palace didn't leave. Even when the rain began to fall, some covered their candles with plastic cups. Others used umbrellas to protect the flowers from being washed away. It wasn't about ceremony anymore. It was about love. A kind of love that doesn't need to be spoken to be understood. Because Catherine wasn't just their future queen. To many, she was the beating heart of the royal family, the steady warmth in a cold institution. And as the lights inside Kensington Palace dimmed for the night, people stayed, whispering prayers into the wind. And in that moment, as an entire country stood united in hope, they realized something that broke their hearts. Even the brightest symbols can begin to fade in the glow of the palace lights. The palace remained silent. No photos, no statements, just a heavy stillness hanging over London. Outside Kensington Palace, the candles are burning lower tonight, their light flickering against the iron gates as if they're trying to hold on, just like her. Prince William was seen leaving the hospital without a word, his face pale, his eyes distant, no hand waves, no smiles, only silence. Camilla has quietly returned to her home in Wiltshire, away from cameras, away from questions. And then, one person appeared, Princess Anne. She stood briefly in front of the press, looked straight ahead, and said only one sentence. "She's still fighting." Those 3 words hit the entire nation like a whisper of hope, and a reminder of how fragile that hope has become. Many people couldn't help but recall 1990. The same gray skies, the same fear of losing another beloved princess. It feels as though something inside the royal halls is breaking again. Not the crown, not the monarchy itself, but the faith of a nation and the belief that its royal family can endure without pain. And tonight, as the palace lights dim, one question lingers in every heart. If Princess Catherine never returns to public life, is Britain truly ready for a queen who lives in the shadows?